Dana Roberts stepped out of her black luxury car and looked up at the glass building in front of her. It was a beautiful, sunny morning, and everything around her looked peaceful. People were walking by, some holding coffee, some on their phones. No one paid much attention to her, which was exactly how she liked it. She smoothed out her gray blazer, adjusted the strap of her handbag, and gave a small smile to her assistant, who had just closed the car door behind her. Dana was the CEO of a fast-growing financial group that had recently bought several regional banks, including the one she was now walking into. Her company had been quietly acquiring small banks and turning them around with new technology and better services. Most people didn't know she was the owner, and that was fine with her. She didn't care for fame. What she cared about was doing the job right, making change where it mattered, and helping build something bigger than herself. This visit wasn't planned. Dana had been in meetings all morning, and during a break, she decided to stop by this branch to withdraw a small amount of cash. It was a routine errand, nothing complicated. She didn't even want anyone to know who she was. She just wanted to see how the branch was functioning. She often did this, walking into her businesses as if she were just a regular customer. It helped her stay connected to the real experience of the people they served. Inside the bank, the air was cool and the space was clean. There were a few customers in line, and the sound of typing in printers filled the background. Dana and her assistant walked straight to the counter. A young woman behind the glass gave a polite smile but looked slightly nervous as Dana handed her ID and account details, requesting to withdraw a few $1,000s in cash. The teller looked at the papers, then at Dana, then back at the papers. Again. Her smile faded and her eyebrows knit together. Dana noticed the hesitation, but stayed calm. She had seen this before. Not always, but enough to recognize it. A black woman asking for cash in a bank she wasn't immediately recognized in? Suspicion, doubt, questions. It didn't surprise her anymore, but it still hurt every time. "I'm going to have to get my manager," the teller said, standing up and walking quickly to the back. Dana nodded silently. Her assistant gave her a puzzled look, but Dana just gave a small shake of the head. She didn't want to make a scene. A few moments later, the branch manager appeared. He was a tall man in his mid-40s, with slicked back, hair and a stern look on his face. He walked up to the counter, glanced at Dana and then at the paperwork. He didn't greet her. He didn't smile. He just asked, "Why do you need this amount of cash?" Dana blinked, surprised by the tone. "It's from my account," she said. "I've provided identification and the account number. Everything is in order." The manager didn't respond right away. He looked at the ID again. "You'll have to understand," he said finally. "We can't just hand over this amount to anyone who walks in here with a story." Dana raised her eyebrows. "Excuse me? You're not listed as the account holder in our customer-facing system," he continued. "It looks like you're using a business account. We need corporate approval before releasing funds." Dana took a deep breath. "I am the CEO of the holding company that owns this bank," she said slowly, keeping her voice steady. "This account belongs to one of our sub-entities. I am fully authorized." The manager raised an eyebrow almost like he didn't believe her. "That's a pretty bold claim," he said. "Do you have anything to prove that?" Dana opened her bag and calmly pulled out a folder containing her corporate credentials, including a business card that identified her as CEO, her state-issued ID, and a certified ownership document. She handed them over. He took the papers but barely glanced at them. "I still can't allow a withdrawal without confirming it with corporate." "This is standard policy," he said with a shrug, as if the conversation was over. Dana looked at him, trying to stay composed. She wasn't going to raise her voice. She wasn't going to create a scene. But inside, she was deeply disappointed. Not just with the disrespect, but with how easily people made assumptions. She had walked in quietly, dressed professionally, with the right documents. Still, she was treated like a stranger trying to cheat the system. Her assistant looked at her, unsure what to do. Dana gave her a calm look and took a small step to the side, pulling out her phone. She scrolled through her contacts and pressed a name. The call rang once and was answered immediately. "Hi, it's Dana," she said. "Yes, I'm at the downtown branch. I need a quick confirmation call placed to the manager here." She paused. "Yes, now. Thank you." She hung up, walked back to the counter, and simply stood there, her hands folded. The manager was now glancing at her, sensing that something was off, but he still didn't speak to her. Instead, he walked over to the teller and whispered something. The teller looked uncomfortable. Dana noticed the glances they exchanged and the way the room had suddenly grown tense. Within 1 minute, the manager's phone rang. He picked it up. "Yes, this is Stephen speaking," he said, trying to sound professional. There was a pause. Then his face changed. His back straightened. His eyes widened. "Oh, yes, sir," he stammered. "Yes, of course, I wasn't aware." "Yes, I understand." He turned slowly, looking back at Dana. His face had gone pale. For the first time since he walked in, he looked nervous. Really nervous. Dana didn't say anything. She just looked at him calmly, waiting. He walked over, holding the phone in one hand. "Ms. Roberts, I sincerely apologize," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "I didn't realize who you were. It was never my intention to—" She held up a hand. "You may stop now," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Please follow me." The assistant opened a side door, and Dana led the manager to a private office upstairs. No one else followed. The branch was silent as the door closed behind them. The room upstairs was quiet. Dana walked in first and sat at the small round table in the corner of the office. The branch manager, Stephen, followed behind her slowly. His face was still tense, and his hands fidgeted as he tried to stay composed. He closed the door behind him and stood awkwardly, not sure whether to sit down or stay standing. Dana said nothing at first. She looked at him, calm and silent, for several seconds. That silence felt louder than any words. Finally, she motioned to the empty chair in front of her. "Sit," she said. Stephen sat down, placing his hands on the table and then quickly pulling them back into his lap. He looked down, then tried to meet her eyes. Dana leaned forward slightly, her voice low and steady. "Tell me," she said, "why did you refuse to let me access the funds from an account I clearly own?" Stephen cleared his throat. "Ma'am, I followed standard procedures. We are trained to be cautious when someone requests a large cash withdrawal, especially if their name isn't directly listed on the customer account." Dana didn't respond. She just watched him. "I didn't recognize you," he continued, his voice a little weaker now. "And I wasn't informed that you were coming in today. There were no flags or notes on the account. From my view, it looked like someone claiming to be a company executive trying to access funds. It raised concerns." Dana's expression didn't change. "So your concern was that a black woman with all the proper documents might be trying to commit fraud?" Stephen's eyes widened. No, that's not what I meant." "But that's what happened," Dana said. "You didn't recognize me. That's fine. I don't expect everyone to know my face. But once I gave you the ID, my business card, and proof of ownership, you still dismissed me. You didn't call corporate to confirm anything. You didn't take 5 minutes to verify my authority. You chose to say no." Stephen opened his mouth, then closed it again. He looked like he wanted to explain something but couldn't find the right words. He knew what she said was true. He had seen her credentials. He had seen the matching names. But the moment he looked at her, her skin, her appearance, her quiet tone, he made a decision, one he now regretted deeply. Dana sighed softly and leaned back. "Tell me honestly, if I were a white man in a suit, would you have handled this the same way?" Stephen hesitated. He looked at her, his mouth slightly open. But again, no words came out. "You don't have to answer," Dana said. Your silence is loud enough." She stood up and walked to the window, looking out over the city. Her voice softened. "You know, I didn't come here today to cause trouble. I didn't want to be treated like royalty. I just wanted to be treated like a human being. Like a regular customer walking into her own bank." Stephen stood up slowly too, unsure of what to say. Dana turned to face him again. "I've built this company from the ground up. I've worked for years to grow something that serves people better. Do you know why I bought this bank? Because I wanted to bring real change. Because I wanted people in this community to feel safe and respected when they walked through those doors." She paused. "And now, in my own bank, I was treated like a stranger, like a risk, like a problem." Stephen looked at the floor, ashamed. "I made a mistake," he said quietly. "A big one." Dana nodded. "Yes, you did." There was a long silence between them, the kind that makes time feel heavy. Finally, Dana walked back to the table and picked up a file from her bag. She opened it and looked down at the documents inside. Then she closed it again and placed it on the table. "Your record shows that you've worked here for almost 10 years, she said. "You've been promoted twice. You've led this branch for almost 3 years." Stephen nodded slightly, unsure where she was going with this. "You know the policies. You know the training. You know how to treat people. But today, you didn't follow any of it. You let your assumptions guide you. And whether you admit it or not, those assumptions were based on what you saw when I walked in." Stephen nodded again, slowly this time. "I see that now," he said. "I do." Dana gave a sad smile. "I believe you. I believe that you see it now. But I can't ignore the harm you caused. Not just to me, but to the message it sends to every employee here, and every customer who might be treated the same way." She looked him in the eye. "So I'm letting you go. Effective immediately." Stephen's eyes widened again. Please, Ms. Roberts, I've dedicated my life to this job. I made one mistake, one terrible mistake, but I can fix it. I can do better." Dana shook her head. "This isn't just about one mistake. It's about a culture, a mindset. If I allow you to stay, I send a message that this kind of behavior is acceptable as long as it's followed by an apology. But it's not. You represent the values of this company when you wear that badge. And today, you showed values that don't belong here." Stephen's shoulders dropped. He looked truly broken. "I understand," he said, almost in a whisper. Dana nodded again. "You'll receive a formal letter with full details. Your benefits and final paycheck will be processed within the next week. HR will contact you this afternoon." Stephen didn't say another word. He quietly turned and left the office. Dana sat down again, alone in the room. For a moment she closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She hadn't wanted to do this, but she knew she had to. Downstairs, the assistant waited, near the entrance, watching as Stephen walked out of the building. He didn't say anything. He just kept walking, head down, his briefcase in one hand. Dana came down a few minutes later. Her assistant joined her silently. "Is everything okay?" the assistant asked gently. Dana gave a tired smile. "Yes, it will be." They walked out of the building together. The sun was still shining, but something in the air felt different. Dana looked up at the sky and then back at the bank's logo on the building. It was still hers. The company was still in her hands, but something had changed today. Something deep. She didn't just fire a manager. She had made a choice, a firm one, a choice that said this wasn't just about money or power or titles. It was about dignity, respect, trust. As they got into the car, her assistant finally asked, "How do you keep so calm?" Dana looked out the window for a moment before answering. "Because I've seen worse," she said. "And I've learned that staying calm doesn't mean you're not angry. It means you're focused. It means you're in control. And if I lose that, I lose everything I've worked for." Her assistant nodded, understanding a little more now. Dana's strength wasn't loud. It was quiet, steady, and deeply rooted. It came from years of fighting battles in boardrooms, classrooms, and sometimes even in her own company. As the car pulled away, Dana made a note on her phone. New staff training plan. Mandatory anti-bias workshop. Branch visits to be unannounced. She would turn this moment into something better. Something that mattered. Because that's what real leadership looked like. Not just rising to the top, but standing for something once you got there. And she was just getting started. The next morning, Dana sat in her office, her phone buzzing quietly as emails flowed in. Her eyes scanned reports on her tablet, but her mind was still stuck in the events of the day before. What happened at the bank branch wasn't just an uncomfortable moment. It was a reminder. A reminder that no matter how far she had come, people still saw her skin before they saw her name, her power, or her achievements. She had built something important. Her company was now one of the fastest-growing financial firms in the country. She had fought to get funding, worked through rejection after rejection, and proved everyone wrong. She had turned around struggling banks, improved customer services, and introduced new technologies that made banking easier for thousands of people. But despite all this success, she was still doubted in the most basic moment, when she stood in front of her own branch, asking for her own money. Her assistant entered the room quietly, holding a cup of coffee. "Good morning," she said gently, placing it on the desk. "You have 3 meetings this morning, but your schedule is flexible if you want to delay anything." Dana shook her head. "No, we continue as planned, but I want to add something." The assistant took out her tablet. "Yes? I want to visit 3 more branches this week, unannounced, and next week we'll start work on a new training module for all staff, especially frontline employees." The assistant nodded quickly, typing as Dana spoke. Dana stood up and looked out the tall window. The city moved below her, fast and loud, people going about their day with purpose. She wondered how many of those people had faced what she had faced, being questioned, doubted, dismissed, because of their appearance. And how many stayed silent, simply because they didn't have the power to speak up like she did. The phone rang. Dana picked it up immediately. On the other end was Mr. Jennings, one of the company's senior board members. He had heard about what happened at the branch. "Dana," he said, his voice serious, "I wanted to check in. I heard about the situation yesterday. Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Dana replied calmly. "I handled it." "I'm sure you did," he said. "But there's a lot of buzz going around. Some employees are nervous. They're wondering what happens next." "That's simple," she replied. "We look at the systems that allowed this to happen, and then we fix them." There was a pause. "Some are calling it harsh, the firing, that the manager didn't get a second chance." Dana's voice didn't change. "If I had been a white male CEO in that bank, would I have been stopped, questioned, refused? No. So if we're serious about equity, then the consequences have to be real. Otherwise, it's just words." Mr. Jennings sighed on the other end. "You're right," he said after a moment. "Let me know how I can support." After the call ended, Dana sat for a long moment. Her mind wasn't just on the past anymore. She was thinking about what came next. The deeper problems. Because the manager was just one person. But the mindset behind what he did was much bigger. It was baked into the systems, in hiring, in training, in expectations, in assumptions. Later that day, Dana arrived at another bank branch, this time in a lower-income neighborhood. It wasn't fancy like the downtown branch. The walls were older, the space smaller, but it was busy. People lined up for help, some cashing checks, some trying to understand their loan applications. This branch saw a different kind of customer. People who didn't have big savings or investments, but who needed real help, real trust. Dana walked in quietly, wearing a simple coat and jeans. She didn't bring her assistant this time. She wanted to walk in as any regular customer might. She waited in line, then sat down with a middle-aged woman named Carol, who worked as a service advisor. Dana asked about opening a new checking account. Carol smiled kindly and explained the process in clear, respectful words. She didn't rush. She didn't judge. She offered water, answered every question, and even took extra time to explain the mobile banking features. Dana was impressed. This was the kind of service she wanted across all her branches: patient, respectful, welcoming. When they finished, Dana handed her a card. "Thank you, Carol," she said with a smile. "You'll be hearing from my office soon." Carol looked confused, then glanced at the card and froze. "Wait, you're the CEO?" Dana nodded. "Yes, and you just reminded me what good service looks like." Later that afternoon, Dana called a meeting with her leadership team. They gathered in the large boardroom, a mix of executives from different departments: HR, operations, compliance, technology, marketing. Everyone looked serious. They had all heard about the incident. "I'm not here to talk about what happened yesterday," Dana began. "I'm here to talk about what we're going to do about it." She clicked a remote, and a slide appeared on the screen. "We see you." It was the title of the company's new internal culture program. "For years," Dana continued, "we've focused on growth, innovation, performance. And that's good. But we've ignored something else, something deeper. The way we see people, the way we treat them. The small decisions we make based on appearance, assumptions, bias." She clicked again, revealing 3 bullet points: bias awareness and response training, unannounced branch visits, customer respect audits. "We're launching a new program," she said. "Every employee, from entry-level to executive, will go through real training, interactive, honest, uncomfortable if it needs to be. Not a boring slideshow, but real learning." She paused, letting the words sink in. "We will also begin regular unannounced visits, just like I've been doing. Not to catch people doing wrong, but to reward those doing right. People like Carol, who treated me like a human being even though she didn't know who I was." Heads nodded around the room. "And finally," she added, "we'll conduct what I call respect audits. We'll talk to customers, real ones, and ask how they feel. Not about products or prices, but how they were treated. Whether they felt seen, heard, respected." The room was silent. People weren't just listening, they were thinking. Some were even reflecting on their own behavior. "We're not doing this for PR," Dana said firmly. "We're doing it because it's the right thing. And if we don't lead by example, we have no right to lead at all." After the meeting, one of her top executives, a man named Marcus, approached her quietly. He had worked with Dana for years and was known for his sharp business sense. "I want to say something," he said. "When I first joined, I used to think this kind of talk, about bias and respect, was extra, soft stuff. But I've been watching, and yesterday it hit me. This is about trust. If our customers can't trust us, we have no business." Dana smiled. "Exactly." That evening, Dana received an email. It was from a former employee of the bank, the one where the manager had been fired. The woman had worked there for 2 years and said she had faced similar disrespect. She had quit last year, tired of not being taken seriously. "Thank you," the email read. "I don't know if you'll see this, but what you did gave me hope. Not just because he was fired, but because you didn't stay silent. People like me notice that. It matters." Dana stared at the screen for a long time. Sometimes she wondered if the fight for fairness was worth it, if anyone really cared. But that message reminded her. It was. She wrote back a simple reply: "I see you, and I promise we are building something better." The journey ahead was long. She knew that. Culture didn't change overnight. Systems took time to rebuild. People needed to unlearn old ways. But Dana had never been afraid of hard work. She had walked through storms before. This was just another one. She poured herself a glass of water, sat down, and pulled out a notebook. At the top she wrote in bold letters, "How do we build respect into everything?" She didn't have all the answers yet, but she knew the first step was asking the right question. And that night, she kept writing. The next few days moved quickly. Dana didn't slow down. Her decision to fire the branch manager had started a wave of conversations, inside her company, outside in the media, and among people across the community. Some people praised her for being bold, fair, and strong. Others said she overreacted, that maybe the manager had just made a mistake. But Dana wasn't focused on opinions. She was focused on the truth, and the truth was clear to her. Change only happens when someone stands up, even when it's hard. Inside the bank's headquarters, Dana met with her human resources and communications teams. They were nervous. Emails were coming in from customers, employees, and even reporters. Everyone wanted to know what happened. Some employees asked if they were now under a microscope. A few were scared. But many supported her. They thanked her quietly in the hallways. They whispered that they had faced similar situations before, but had stayed silent. Now they felt seen. Dana listened carefully to everything. She wasn't just a CEO in title. She believed in understanding people. She wanted to know what they felt, what they feared, and what needed to change. So she decided to take a different approach. Instead of hiding in meetings, she began visiting branches every day, one by one. She would walk in without notice, talk to employees, observe their behavior, and ask real questions. She didn't want fake smiles or polished answers. She wanted honesty. In one small branch, she met a young teller named Aisha. The girl was in her early 20s, nervous but bright. Dana asked her how she felt working at the bank. Aisha looked around, then leaned in slightly. "It's good," she said softly. "But sometimes people talk down to us. Some managers don't listen. They assume we're not smart enough to handle certain customers. Or they talk to us like we're just machines." Dana didn't react immediately. She let Aisha speak. "And sometimes," Aisha continued, "we see customers treated differently. A man in a suit comes in and gets offered coffee. A woman in old clothes comes in and they act like she's wasting time. But that woman is still a customer. She deserves respect." Dana smiled gently. "You're absolutely right," she said. The next day, Dana called for a company-wide video meeting. Thousands of employees were invited to join. Some watched from their desks, some from break rooms, some from their homes. On the screen, Dana appeared, not in a business suit but in a simple sweater, sitting in a quiet office. Her message was personal. "I want to speak from the heart today," she began. "Not as your CEO, but as someone who, like many of you, knows what it feels like to be ignored, doubted, or judged. What happened last week at one of our branches was personal. But it wasn't just about me. It was about how we treat people, not just customers but each other." She paused. Faces across the company listened closely. "I'm not here to blame everyone. I'm here to challenge us, to become better. We can't change the whole world in a day. But we can change how we show up, at the desk, at the counter, in every phone call, in every smile." She went on to announce a new internal project. Human First, a culture program focused on empathy, respect, and active listening. It would include workshops, real stories from employees, anonymous reporting tools, and regular feedback sessions. Everyone, including Dana herself, would be required to participate. After the call, something shifted. Conversations began to happen. In offices, lunchrooms, and even online. Employees started sharing their experiences. Some said they had never felt comfortable speaking before. Now they could. People who had felt invisible started to feel heard. But not everyone liked the change. One senior manager sent a private email to another director. "This whole thing is a distraction," he wrote. We're wasting time on feelings when we should focus on numbers. The email was later leaked to Dana. She didn't get angry. She simply invited the man for a private meeting. When he arrived, she offered him tea and asked him to sit. "I read your message," she said calmly. He looked uncomfortable. "It was a private message," he muttered. "Sure," Dana replied. "But the feelings in it, they're not private. They show up in how we lead, how we hire, how we speak to people." He didn't know what to say. Dana looked at him directly. "You think caring about people is a waste of time, but I believe it's the most important work we do. We handle people's money, their dreams, their fears, and if we can't make them feel human, then we've failed, no matter how big our numbers are." The man left quietly. A week later, he resigned. Meanwhile, in the city where the first incident happened, the story had caught attention. A local news channel aired a report titled, "CEO Walks Into Bank, Walks Out with Truth." People in the community began talking. Customers who had felt ignored before began to return. New customers signed up, saying they were proud to support a company that stood for fairness. A group of college students even wrote Dana a letter. They were young black women studying finance, and they said her story gave them courage. "You made us feel like we belong in this world," they wrote, "that we don't have to change who we are to succeed." Dana read the letter 3 times. Then she called her team and said, "Let's create internships for students like them. Let's open doors." Soon, the company launched a new student program focused on underrepresented groups in banking. It wasn't just a press release, it was real action. They funded scholarships, set up mentorships, and invited students to learn inside the bank. Dana also began writing a personal blog. In it, she didn't just talk about business, she talked about her journey. She wrote about growing up in a working-class family, about the teachers who believed in her, about the racist remarks she had once overheard in boardrooms. She told the truth. Her truth. People began to follow her blog. It became more than just a CEO's message. It became a voice that inspired others, people who had been silenced, people who felt unseen. And that gave Dana a deep sense of purpose. But even as things changed, Dana remained watchful. She didn't want this to be a temporary wave. She wanted it to last. One afternoon, she sat with her executive team and said, "Let's go deeper. Let's audit every policy, hiring, training, promotions. Where are the gaps? Where is the bias hiding?" That began a new project, a full internal review. The team looked at promotion patterns, complaint logs, customer surveys, hiring data, and what they found was clear. In some areas, progress had been made, but in others, bias still lived quietly. In who got leadership roles, who got listened to, who got second chances. Dana didn't hide the report. She shared it company-wide. She said, "We can't fix what we don't face. So let's face it together." Some people were surprised, some were uncomfortable, but many were ready. A new energy started to grow inside the company. Departments began creating small teams focused on respect, inclusion, and culture. People came forward with ideas, solutions, and stories. The company started to feel alive in a new way. And all of this began because one woman walked into a bank and was denied access to her own account. One small moment had opened a window into a bigger truth. One painful experience had sparked a movement, and Dana? She didn't stop. She kept visiting branches, talking to people, asking hard questions. She didn't want to lead from behind a desk. She wanted to lead from where the people were. Because she believed leadership wasn't about being the smartest or the strongest. It was about being the most human. That belief had cost her many things over the years: friends, peace, even sleep. But it had also built something powerful: a company with a heart, a movement with a purpose. And as she looked around at her growing team, her customers, the letters from students, the emails from staff. She knew one thing for sure. This was only the beginning. The months after Dana's bold move to fire the manager at the branch went by quickly, filled with hard work and many small victories. But Dana knew the journey toward true change was far from over. Real change, she understood, wasn't something that could be rushed or forced. It was slow, sometimes frustrating, and required the patience to keep moving forward, even when progress wasn't obvious. Dana's first challenge was to maintain the momentum she had started. After the initial shockwaves from the firing, some employees were motivated and eager to make a difference, while others were quietly resistant. Dana didn't ignore the resistance. Instead, she believed that listening carefully, being patient, and showing empathy could help bring people along. She continued her surprise visits to branches, always walking in like an ordinary customer. Each visit was a chance to connect with staff and customers, to learn firsthand what was working and what wasn't. She wanted to understand the real experiences of the people who worked on the front lines. What challenges did they face? What made them proud? What made them afraid? One day, Dana walked into a branch on the city's edge, where the neighborhood was still recovering from years of economic struggle. The branch was small, with worn furniture and peeling paint. Dana sat quietly in line and watched as customers came and went. The employees seemed tired but determined. When it was her turn, Dana asked a teller named Jorge about his work. Jorge was in his late 20s, friendly but cautious. "It's not easy," Jorge said quietly. "We get a lot of people who are stressed or scared about their money. Some days it feels like we're the only people who understand." Dana nodded. "That's exactly why this job matters." Jorge smiled briefly. "But sometimes we feel the company doesn't understand us." Dana was surprised. "Tell me more." Jorge explained that while training programs had improved, sometimes the leadership felt distant. The corporate focus was often on profits and numbers, and less on how employees were treated. Some people felt like their voices weren't heard, especially when it came to concerns about discrimination or unfair treatment. Dana listened carefully. This was the kind of honest feedback she wanted. It reminded her that while the company was making changes, there was still a gap between policies and people's everyday experiences. She promised Jorge she would take his words back to the leadership team, and she meant it. Back at headquarters, Dana worked with HR to improve internal communication. They created anonymous channels for employees to share concerns safely. They set up regular town hall meetings where staff at all levels could ask questions directly to leaders. And Dana herself started hosting monthly Coffee with the CEO sessions, where small groups of employees could meet her informally, ask questions, and share ideas. These sessions were powerful. Employees appreciated that Dana wasn't just a distant figure, but someone who wanted to listen and learn. People began to feel more connected, and a culture of openness slowly started to grow. At the same time, Dana's leadership team pushed forward with the Human First program. The workshops on bias, empathy, and respectful communication were updated based on employee feedback. Instead of one-time trainings, they became ongoing conversations, embedded into daily work. Managers were coached to lead with kindness and fairness, not just numbers. One important change came from a surprising place. A group of junior employees formed a volunteer committee called Voices for Change. They wanted to help shape the company's culture from the ground up. Dana met with them regularly, excited by their energy and ideas. The committee organized informal meetups where employees could share stories about their experiences at work. Some stories were joyful, about a manager who went out of their way to help a struggling employee. Others were painful, about moments of unfair treatment or bias. These stories became powerful reminders of why the company needed to keep improving. Dana was touched by their courage. "Your voices matter," she told them. "Together, we can make this a place where everyone feels respected and valued." Well, now, the customer side, Dana pushed for more community engagement. She believed banks should be more than just places to store money. They should be pillars of their neighborhoods. The company launched financial education programs, helping people learn about saving, budgeting, and investing. They partnered with local nonprofits to support small businesses and offer microloans to entrepreneurs who might otherwise be overlooked. These initiatives started to change the company's reputation. Customers saw the bank as a partner, not just a service provider. Word spread, and new accounts opened from people who wanted to support a company that cared. Meanwhile, Dana's own story continued to inspire others. She was invited to speak at conferences, schools, and community groups. She shared her experiences honestly, the challenges, the setbacks, and the victories. People admired her strength and her refusal to accept unfair treatment. But Dana never lost sight of the deeper work. She knew her role was not just to be a symbol, but to create lasting systems that protected fairness and respect. One day, a major challenge tested her leadership again. A popular but controversial employee blog published an anonymous post accusing the bank of still having hidden biases, especially in hiring and promotions. The post went viral inside the company and sparked heated debates. Instead of denying the claims, Dana called a company-wide meeting. She stood before her employees and said, "I hear you. I see the concerns. We are not perfect, and we will never be if we don't face our faults honestly." She announced a full third-party audit of the company's hiring, promotion, and pay practices. The audit would be transparent and shared with all employees. This openness won respect, even from critics. It showed that Dana was committed to real change, not just words. The audit's results were eye-opening. It confirmed some of the concerns: unconscious biases in hiring, slower promotion rates for minority employees, and gaps in pay equity. But it also highlighted areas where progress had been made. Dana's leadership team immediately set new goals based on the findings. They improved recruitment efforts to reach diverse candidates, introduced mentorship programs for underrepresented employees, and increased transparency in promotion decisions. Dana personally championed these changes. She believed that fairness wasn't just a moral issue, but a business one. Diverse teams performed better, created more innovation, and connected more deeply with customers. Through it all, Dana kept reminding herself why she had started this journey. It wasn't just for her own dignity. It was for every employee who had ever felt unseen, every customer who had felt disrespected, and every young person who needed to know they belonged. One evening, as Dana sat at her desk, she looked through a pile of letters from customers and employees. Some told stories of how the company's new approach had changed their lives. A woman wrote about how a respectful loan officer had helped her buy her first home. A young man thanked the company for its internship program, which had opened doors he never dreamed possible. Dana smiled. Moments like these reminded her that the fight was worth it. Her journey also showed her the power of standing up, not just for herself, but for everyone. One small act of courage, like walking into a bank and demanding respect, could create waves far beyond what anyone expected. She knew the road ahead would still have challenges. Old habits died hard. Biases ran deep. But Dana was ready because she believed that leadership meant more than success in numbers. It meant being brave enough to demand fairness, being patient enough to listen, being strong enough to change, and with every step she took, she was building a future where no one would ever be denied access, not because of their name, their face, or their color, but because they were human.